Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we get Birdman coffee. I'm your host, rock-hard pillar of justice, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and that's a hard name to say.
And who is on the line with us?
Mick Circo, and this is my scheming face.
I can't see it, but I have to assume it's there. And today's episode is the Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law episode, A Very Personal Injury.
An Apache chief to see you, Mr. Birdman.
Which one?
He says that's his name.
And this episode aired on September 23rd, 2001, a very happy time in American history.
Oh, boy.
We needed Birdman to help us heal, and this episode really did.
Oh,
but
man.
Mick, you are one of our high-level patrons. You paid to unlock this episode and also be on the show. And I really want you to talk about why you chose Harvey Birdman in this episode, because Henry and I are both huge fans of Harvey Birdman, so you picked a good one.
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, this is my favorite episode of the show, in fact, and I really think this is, seminal shows of this type of animation. So, like I didn't grow up with cable, so in the 90s, if you wanted to watch a comedy television show on public television, it was The Simpsons or nothing else. And then they kind of tried a couple of times over the decade to have big animation booms, and they never really took. But this was one of those shows that cemented the idea that you could do this type of television, and it has a lot of great actors in it, and just a good show overall.
As an innocent child, were you a viewer of the straight-laced action Hanna-Barbera cartoons that this was inspired by?
I did not see a whole lot of them until Cartoon Network actually launched. So we would go over to my aunt and uncle's in the summer. They had cable. So then I would watch a lot of that just during the day, and you would get to see, tons of this schlock. And this in particular was one that I remember because that paired with Space Ghost, and then later they turned that into a pretty good property as well.
I think this was the last point in history in which you could still reference these characters and have some sort of common ground with your audience.
It was their last chance.
Yeah, but I mean, even me, having grown up in the 80s and 90s and thinking I've seen almost every Hanna-Barbera cartoon, there are still some of these where it's like, oh, the judge is a character that had his own show. And I never saw it. I don't know why, but I would only see the comedy stuff. They never really reran the action stuff.
I knew some of the action ones. They did have an action hour block I'd see occasionally on Cartoon Network. They would do a Space Ghost block of OG Space Ghost, and there's a classic 5-parter super crossover where Space Ghost meets not Birdman but Mytor, the Herculoids, and other of those jokes.
And who was the guy that was with Dino Mutt? He was very Birdman-like. Okay, and he's a character later on the show. No wonder.
Azure Falcone.
Yes. Oh god. Boy, yeah. I really want to get into all of the mega deep Hanna-Barbera cuts to things I had still never seen.
Also in the race to who saw it first that we usually do. I mean, this just falls under the same thing as the other Adult Swim shows we've done, because as we know, I was there watching it day one. Bob even got to see it before day one.
That's right. I had the Adult Swim screener tape I got when I was an anime reviewer, if that makes any sense. They just sent it to me. They're like, you like cartoons, watch this.
It's just a bunch of words.
Yeah, no, that's the sort of thing you would have found at a Comic-Con in the summer before it launched back in the day.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this will never fly because it's too weird. But Mick, when did you start watching the show, and where did you find it?
Well, again, I didn't have cable growing up, so when I went off to college at the University of Kansas, they had cable, basic cable in all of the dorm rooms, so I would just watch hours and hours of whatever was on Comedy Central. And then I had, of course, some friends pointing out that there was a comedy block coming, that I'd watch some Space Ghost Coast to Coast. So yeah, I was in there day one. It was pretty awesome.
But day one for Birdman is actually September 9th, 1967.
Oh, damn.
That's when it all began for him. So, as I talked about in our Space Ghost Coast to Coast episode, in the silver age of comics, comic books hit a whole new boom. They got really big in the 40s, and then in the 60s, they had a second boom, mostly caused thanks to the incredible stuff that was being done by Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Gene Colan, and Stan Lee, and many others at Marvel Comics. And Hanna-Barbera is not one to miss jumping on anything that's popular. So they hired artist Alex Toth to design tons of superheroes in the Kirby Marvel kind of style for them. Space Ghost was one of the first. In the second line was Birdman. And it was Birdman and the Galaxy Trio was the show. So if you ever, and the Galaxy Trio are our characters on Harvey Birdman as well.
Right. So like Peanut and Bird Girl and
Falcon, Falcon 7, all of them were there in a straight-laced show about a superhero called Birdman who got his powers from the Egyptian sun god Ra, and he would fly around, blast people with his solar beams, which are totally different from the beams that shoot out of Space Ghost's hands. I mean, so different.
I love the originality too of a character who derives his power from the sun and is
that Superman had been doing that for about 20 years, 30 years at this point.
Despite how bad these cartoons were in terms of writing and animation, these designs are so great, and it's so great to see them revived, especially Phil Ken 7 or Falcon 7. I was looking up the original designs for him, just like the original character sheets for him. He looks so fucking cool.
Yeah, no, Alex Toth is one of the greatest character designers in animation history, he was a dedicated draftsman. He died at his drawing table. That's how he wanted to go out and how he did go out. But so Birdman, completely unrelated to the Michael Keaton movie.
What's that movie about? How critics are bad and they make you cry?
Pretty much, yeah. And how true art is, and also kids need to stop looking at their phones and going viral. It's a fine movie. But so on the show, though, it was a straight superhero show with Birdman and his sidekicks, Bird Boy and Bird Girl, not Peanut, but Bird Boy, and his sidekick Falcon Avenger, then worked for Nick Fury ripoff Falcon 7 to go on adventures to fight enemies such as Reducto, X the Eliminator, and Mentok the Mind Taker.
I'm just laughing at you giving their names because I'm thinking of how they're portrayed in this show.
I know. If you watch the original ones, you're like, oh, these characters are all played straight? Like, these are just the villains, huh? The show got canceled after 20 episodes, and pretty much that was that for Birdman. And they did a ton of other superhero shows in the meantime. Actually, Blue Falcon, which it's funny you brought him up, and Dynamite, that was basically Hanna-Barbera repackaging Birdman, but giving him Scooby-Doo. They're like, well, what if Birdman works with Scooby-Doo?
That's right. They teamed up.
Yes, yeah.
It was kind of a time-honored tradition to turn like every property that they had into some version of Scooby-Doo.
Everybody needs to solve crimes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, hey, Hanna-Barbera's got to pay those bills. So they're like, okay, do you not like this as Scooby-Doo? What if the dog was a shark? What about that? What if the shark was a genie instead, a sassy gay genie?
What if it was a car?
I think my favorite of them was Funky Phantom, the Revolutionary War ghost.
What makes you so funky as Peanut? So, cut to the Cartoon Network era. They are rerunning the crap out of all of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, Birdman and Space Ghost included. Birdman is actually the star of multiple, they do original bumper things that are like 10 seconds long, but he was in a few of those. He was a favorite of the Cartoon Network in production department when they were making ads.
Are you talking about the pre-Adult Swim sort of wry look at bad characters?
Before that.
Oh, okay.
When they were played straight, they're like, it's the Cartoon Network logo, and Birdman flies through it, and he shoots his lasers, all stuff like that. But then, by the mid-90s, they were ready to joke around more about how, maybe the Hair Bear Bunch isn't funny, and they're just stupid looking, and let's make fun of them. And so they had a popular show called Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which we covered in a previous episode of this. And in 2 episodes of the show, Evan Dorkin and Sarah Dwyer, regular writers for Space Ghost, they came up with an episode called Pilot and Sequel that was the sequel to the pilot that was their pre-pilot, the phony pre-pilot for Space Ghost, where the show was hosted by Birdman, who is an even more pathetic person than Space Ghost.
Oh, he is ragged in those episodes.
He really is.
Birdman tries to put on a good face, at least, in Harvey Birdman.
He's trying so hard. And actually, Bob, you had a clip from it, don't you?
Yeah, this is him introducing himself as the host of Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
The producers have been good enough to move the ghost planet closer to the sun so I can use its life-giving golden rays to bring you exciting razzmatazz showbiz excitement.
Meet the new boss.
Dumb as the old boss.
And if my wife is watching, Just wanted to say, honey, I love you. I'm better now. Come home, baby.
Yeah, come get some.
What?
Oof, boy. Wow.
Yeah, I chose one
forgot
of his
how dark.
one of his darkest moments.
Yes.
And this was playing against Captain and Tennille as the guests. So
That's right.
Oh wow!
enjoy their reactions as well.
Oh,
Oh God, I love that too. And that they fire him at the end. They're like, it's a night show. It's a talk show. It happens at night. If you have no powers at night, Birdman, then you can't do the show. So they fire him at the end of that. But so they invented the name Harvey Birdman on Space Ghost in 97, I believe the episode aired. That was Evan and Sarah. Now, you guys should check out our friend of the show, Matt J, Cartoons 101. He did an interview with Evan Dorkin where Dorkin talked about how they were pitching, him and Sarah Dyer, to do a Birdman show, a spin-off show. But they lost out on that, and it instead would be made by Michael O'Welling and Eric Richter. And Michael was an executive at Cartoon Network at the time and still is. Like, he's a CMO, I think it is.
Something like that.
Chief Marketing Officer. He is a high-level guy.
he's a huge cheese.
They also did kind of a pilot. They did kind of a pilot for Birdman as well in this very funny one called Coffee Break.
Birdman, a daring ambush of an armored car carrying our...
Is something wrong, Falcon 7?
Are you sure you should let him sit on the console like that?
Avenger? He is always by my side.
His claws are right next to the doomsday button. It's dangerous.
Poppycock, he's fully trained on the console. Watch this. Avenger, get Birdman coffee.
The coffee button is right next to Doomsday.
I remember that so much. Get Birdman coffee. They also, so this was like pre-Adult Swim, like being very snarky about the 70s stuff and 60s stuff. There was one where it was a Pulp Fiction parody with, I believe, Shaggy and Droopy in the car, and one where they're interviewing the male Wonder Twin about how his life sucks because all he does is turn into water and things that are made of water.
Oh, right.
So there were a lot of these bumpers that was like, you could see the direction that they would be taking towards Adult Swim.
So that joke in the episode's a callback then.
Oh, the coffee? Yes, yeah.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
They always think of him. And Eric Richter was one of the many internal Cartoon Network employees who then will become Space Ghost writers and go on to then write other Adult Swim shows. And it all started with them just being production people at Cartoon Network, having to watch 8 billion hours of terrible cartoons, and then just thinking like, well, this is stupid in this specific way. So they collected all these observations after a decade of watching these Hanna-Barbera cartoons and then repurposed them for the purposes of Adult Swim goofery. So the show premiered along with all the other Adult Swim stuff about 10 days before 9/11.
It had a stealth premiere in December of 2000, which is weird. Like a few of these Adult Swim shows had like a weird stealth premiere that they didn't really talk about. It was like on at 2 a.m. at some point.
Yeah, it's an odd test.
Yeah.
Though that's the type of Adult Swim programming that carries on to this day. Of just like at 2 a.m. we're just going to show something.
Some of the best sketch comedy ever are those infomercials that air like once at 3 a.m. Just steal them. They're so funny. Steal them all.
Though when the show began, when they finally approved Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, which would not really be a takeoff of the character from Space Ghost and just instead recast Birdman as a lawyer who would argue in the defense of cartoon criminals, which was really just a reason to do postmodern deconstructions of many cartoons, which most people don't even remember now. And the show had nothing but problems in being made. Massive production issues at all times. The first episode, the pilot, was produced by J.J. Settlemeyer of TV Funhouse, Saturday TV Funhouse fame. I think they realized they couldn't do that on a cable budget after that first episode, which that's the Bannon custody case one.
Right. And we have to think about just how much all of the voice acting costs because Gary Cole is your lead character, also huge Hollywood caliber voice talent like Maurice LaMarche, Tom Kenny, Rob Paulson, all of these like I'm not saying that Dana Snyder is not a real he's got one of the best voices ever, but he's not working like these LA jobs. At least he wasn't then.
Why, and their SAG also.
Yeah.
So the pilot cost more money than the subsequent episodes. That kind of surprises me, just because I went back and watched that one too, and it seems, at least the animation seems really rough compared to where they would get to later.
Yeah.
Not that it was ever awesome, but
No, it actually looks worse, but that's because J.J. Settlemeyer has this very specific way of doing stuff, which is what makes it so good for TV Funhouse, but it's not what you expect to see on Cartoon Network. So I think they knew they needed a higher quality there. I think another of their mistakes, though, was that they thought they could run Harvey Birdman like Space Ghost, meaning don't have to animate too many new things. You just reuse old stuff. Like this episode has some of the closest they've ever done with that of, oh, I'm sure there's a scene from this for Super Friends. Like, not really. They half animated stuff.
I think the only time they use old animation is in the very beginning of every episode where they're trying to fool you as you're for like 10 seconds, like, oh, this is Quick Draw McGraw, this is the Flintstones, this is the Jetsons, but then immediately something weird happens or they change the animation in some way. There's like an opening fake out.
Yeah.
Where C-Lab for a long time, it was just reusing old animation until they were like, we can't do anything in this way. We have to make new animation.
They Frankenstein together so many things on C-Lab. It's impressive in that way.
I loved C-Lab. Go back and watch it. It is hideous. It is all just editing effects until like season 2.
So the next 6 episodes of the show were produced by Allied Arts and Sciences, and I don't know what happened there, but those 6 episodes had major delays. So they show the pilot. 2 weeks later, they show this episode. And then they take 2 years off of showing Harvey Birdman.
It's I thought they came back in July of this.
Okay, no, they took a year off.
Yeah,
but I remember also in one of the commentaries that Eric said that he had children faster than Harvey Birdman episodes came out. Like he had 2 children in the time it took them to air 2 episodes of Harvey Birdman.
And this is one of the few shows I can think of. So this is traditional digital ink and paint, and it was, I believe, animated by Rough Draft in Korea. After season 2, I believe, or season 1, I believe. Is it 2 or 1?
It's 2.
Okay, after season 2, they went to After Effects internally, and the show looked a lot better. It was really risky to do that in the early 2000s. You can get like really like, I don't know, too smooth animation, too puppety, but they try to make it look like a traditionally animated show, and they finally achieved the level in which the animation matches the snappiness of the writing.
I was one of those haters who was just like, hey, look, I'll look at Flash animation on my computer, but it's 2006. I shouldn't see Flash animation on TV. It looks too cheap. I was foolish then, especially like at the time they switched over for Cartoon Network Studios to produce Birdman that way. They were doing the same thing with that House of Imaginary Friends cartoon, which looked really good.
That's true, yeah. I think like it's so good it even kind of fools me still. I have to like look really hard at it. It's like, okay, that arm moved way too smooth. This is After Effects. But they do things like smears, like they do traditional animation effects within this world of After Effects to make it look really good.
And it really fit with the snappiness that they are going for in all of the dialogue as well.
My theory for this show is, after watching like 6 episodes again, is that these are all 22-minute scripts put into an 11-minute show.
Yeah, it has enough side plots, and on a couple commentaries too, they say like, "Oh, we were doing this story with Avenger having an egg, and then at the end of the episode, we do a joke about it, and then we forgot, like, oh yeah, we didn't ever talk about that the entire episode." And another issue that the show had in the early seasons was that they wanted to do the show to exploit Cartoon Network's massive library of cartoons that they could do stuff with, and they of course were going to go for the most famous stuff first. They were going to do the Flintstones, they were going to do Scooby-Doo, they were going to do Super Friends, and Johnny Quest. A problem with all of those is that those are so famous that they still have like brand managers who don't like jokes about them. And so, I mean, I'm sure we all love the Flintstones as Sopranos and Shaggy as a stoner, but in both those cases, executives were over their shoulder to be like, well, but you can't. At the end of this episode, he has to still be Fred Flintstone. You have to say...
And it wasn't really weed.
And it wasn't really weed. In all those cases, they had to cover it. And I think I would also bet that kind of negotiation behind the scenes is another thing that led to delays. And so I think the lesson, and I'll point out a few more of situations like that, I assume, from this episode too, when we get into the episode. But the lesson I think they learned from that in the later seasons was get characters no one cares about.
Do whatever you want with Peter Potamus. No one will say anything about it.
You can have him talk about his dick all the time. No one will say anything everything. Or same with like Devlin. Who has ever heard of Devlin in their entire life?
I still don't know what that is. What is Devlin?
Devlin was the Evil Knievel guy. That
Again, I didn't realize that was. I thought that was an original character until right now. That is such a great episode. He's played by Toby Huss. That's a fun. Oh, that episode's so good. They're just like pills stuck to his face.
Bring it. I love Toby Huss. He is perfect. And well, I mean, and they also had Shazam, Speed Buggy. They even created a fake Japanese band with the side characters from the Charlie Chan cartoon from the 70s, which they don't own Charlie Chan, but they own the other characters, so they just had to rename them. And also, you don't want to remind people of Charlie Chan.
Nah.
Well, actually, one of the most disturbing episodes that they got away with, not even that Boo Boo was the Unabomber.
Yeah.
But another one was that Augie Doggy was arrested and treated like a dog.
That's
and
right.
He was then put into programming by Phil Sebin and tortured psychologically until he lived as a regular dog. And it's like horrifying. Augie Doggy was better in the later episodes, but that was part of the fun too of the show, is that they got away with so much stuff with like innuendo and winks to the camera, and they're like, no, look at the one where Peanut was getting his powers and it was all about him getting erections.
Yeah. I mean, it had to be all innuendo at this point in time for Adult Swim because they were still very worried, especially in the first year. I remember, I've said this before on our podcast, but there would be red text running along the bottom of the screen. This is for adults. Tune out, children. Tune out. And all of the bumpers were for that purpose. Like, this is adult programming. Don't sue us. Your kid should not watch this. So
they would do that announcement that you get at the public pool when it's time for the old people to swim lanes.
Yeah. And I mean, now, like, just have as many dicks as you want in Rick and Morty. Just fill the entire episode with dicks left and right. And they did an entire...
shit isn't a bad word.
Wasn't there an entire episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force that was just
Wongburger.
Yes, just 9 million penises.
They just say dick 800 times there. I think because they were told finally by standard practice, like, look, you can say dick now. Okay, they're like, time for the dick episode about ripping your dick off.
Cross the dick barrier.
This show was still in the early days of Cartoon Network, so they had to get, like you said, they got around that stuff. It was still, in this episode, a character says, hell no. And I remember at the time thinking like, whoa, they let that character say hell? And we did touch on it, but the voice talent on this was superb. Gary Cole, Stephen Colbert, John Michael Higgins, Maurice LaMarche, Paget Brewster, Phil Lamar, Gray Griffin, formerly Gray Delisle, Mark Hamill, Lorraine Newman, Lewis Black, Michael McKeon, and Toby Huss were all guest stars as well. And Frank Welker would even make appearances to play the guys he played.
That's so crazy. And I mean, I know it's been almost 20 years, so it's kind of unfair to say this, but this is when Stephen Colbert could still have fun. And he has so much fun on this show. All of his performances are great, especially Reducto and Phil Sebin. He is just like having the time of his life. He is going insane on this show, and I love it.
Stephen Colbert is one of my favorite comedians of all time. I hope he never disappoints me like every other aging comedian, but I love him so much. Stranger the Candy, one of my favorite shows ever.
It's so good. And I'm so sad he's trapped on a talk show for old people for the rest of his life.
He's doing his best.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it when I watched a few eps, and I'm like, he's still Stephen Colbert, but I want him to be like way out there. Like, get off of network TV, give up all of your money because I want you to be poor and
exactly,
and do comedy for me.
Yeah. He talked about how when they were producing Strangers with Candy, they were filming it in New York, but they had to do it in the cheapest way possible. And that included their writer's room was downtown, as he described it, downtown surrounded by sweatshops. And he's just like, what am I doing?
I think they had to find a new abandoned school every year to film it too.
Yep. Because they were just going to tear it apart anyway. Unfortunately, New York is apparently filled with abandoned schools. So, and the writing was superb too, just to fit the great voice cast of people they could get. And after 37 episodes in 6 years, which by even Venture Brothers standards, that's slow. But hey, you got good quality for all that time.
And a half-hour long finale where he dies.
Yeah. And literally 30 minutes, not even 22. It was a 30-minute long one, and it was such a cool finale where they bring back Colbert, both of his characters. So in the start of the final season, they kill off Reducto and Phil Ken Sebin, but then they bring him those both back for the last episode so he could be there. And when they put out the final episode, they had to retry every case from every previous episode.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
Because it was revealed that the jury was the same every episode because they never drew a different jury. And it was a great final episode where it ends and Birdman's just dead. Like, he's like, no, he's dead. But they are bringing Birdman back for a reboot next year.
This fall.
This fall, called Harvey Birdman, Attorney General. Which is, he's going to be the Attorney General for the new president, Phil Ken Sebin.
Oh, I can't wait for that. And also, I don't want to not mention the really good video game.
Yes.
So it is basically like Phoenix Wright for babies, but it is essentially like a 2-hour-long playable Harvey Birdman episode. It is the same level of humor, the same level of animation. I kind of want to replay it now after watching these again because it is just a great little short game. It should be on Steam or something. It's so great and so perfect. I mean, you shouldn't have sold that game for $40 because it was a 2-hour game, but
and not put it on the Wii either.
Yeah, but it is a very, very, very fun video game.
At least watch a playthrough of it. You'll
yeah,
get all the jokes.
At least do that.
And they got everybody but Colbert, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think that was 2007 that game came out, so he was off the show by then.
No, it feels like development of that took forever. So wasn't it a Phoenix Wright type game?
It was. I mean, Phoenix Wright games are like 30 to 40 hours long, so it's basically as long as a Phoenix Wright case, but it was published by Capcom, and it made sense. Like, hey, Harvey Birdman, that makes sense.
There's even Capcom jokes in it, right? Like Guile's in it.
Yeah, there's Capcom characters in the game, and again, all in the Harvey Birdman style. Is so good. Have you played this game, Mick? It's great.
Unfortunately, I haven't. I
think it was
jump in and say something.
But. Oh God, it's so good. I think it was Wii, PSP, and PS2.
Yeah, they'd have to redo the license and all that.
I'm sure there's
blah,
a lot
blah,
of like licensing. You're right.
Compared to Aqua Teen's Ninja Golf game or whatever, it was a way better game, I had heard.
Oh, yeah.
I love this show. It's all on Hulu, which you can sign up for at tiny.cc/TS Hulu for a 30-day free trial. Sorry, I gotta get the ads in here now. But
it's the sweetest plum.
But I think it holds up maybe the best of all the original Adult Swim shows. It's right up there with like home movies for me. And it's one of the best Adult Swim shows ever, I think.
Yeah, I feel like of all the original Adult Swim shows, it is my favorite in terms of. So I love Aqua Teen Hunger Force and I love C-Lab, but I feel like they are sort of like Dadaist stoner comedies. This is written like a real ass TV show. They can't just end an episode with an explosion. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, and there are like so many jokes. This whole series is just so packed with jokes. I didn't even know who these writers were, and I still really don't, but I'm like, God damn, the show is funny.
And like we said, Michael of the two creators, he is now an executive at Cartoon Network, while meanwhile, Eric, he wrote for American Dad. Like, he was a co-executive producer on the later seasons of American Dad, which were still really good.
Yeah.
And I can totally see his touch on those. Like, American Dad is similarly like super fast-paced with weird references, but also slice of life stuff and a kind of... and the political edge to the show too, which I really love about this show, that it could get political on hot button issues like evolution being taught in schools, gay marriage, gun control, and find funny shit to do with it, which in our Black Watch Plaid, which is all about the Patriot Act era of stuff, like it is a very good Bush era show.
And the terror levels.
Yes, yeah. and I think it's fitting that it's coming back in now in this current political
in
era.
the hell world.
I wonder what could possibly be the impetus for that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd rather have a president, Phil Ken Sebin, who's done every drug.
He's done every drug, who is completely insane, sold out to every... Let's talk... I mean, Phil Ken Sebin, he's not in this episode. He is one of the greatest characters ever. He is one of the nuttiest characters who can do anything and say anything, and just... He's posing.
He just like pops into the scene whenever he's needed.
Yeah, I one of my favorite scenes in rewatching it was when rewatching the Peanut is coming of age story episode, is that it starts off with it being like a boardroom meeting and he's giving a presentation, and when he's turned around, he doesn't turn to face everybody else, but he has the eye patch on the back of his head facing them, and meanwhile his hand, while pushed backwards is doing all of the crazy hand acting it always does.
There are so many great little visual jokes peppered all throughout this series. It's not just the writing, but yeah, Phil is great. I also like how he will not let anyone get a word in edgewise and will also do the other side of the conversation. It's like, will you do this for me? Great, you will. Thank you. I'm out of here.
Well, no, I know you will. Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
great. And that it was also really insidery. Another of my favorite ones was Gawny Fish.
I just watched that one.
Which is full of AOL Time Warner jokes about what a shitty place to work it was.
The letters are falling off the building.
Yes. And how they're just like, no, you got to pay for everything. Oh, a new pen? Gonna cost you.
That's another one of those characters that just is so snappy and talks so fast. He's like literally strapped to Birdman via a rope for the entire episode. Like, oh, it's so good.
Shocking him as he has to work at that Greek restaurant that's set up upstairs.
It is such a good night to kiss. It is such a good night to dance. It is such a good night to Scooby-Doo, 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 love.
Dr. Quest, tell us a little about your relationship
Well, Race and I met one night.
with your boys.
Right.
Harvey Birdman, attorney at law. Premiere Sunday, September 2nd at 11.
Podcast. Hey, it's Henry Gilbert.
Hey, it's Hanna-Barbera mutant Bob Mackey.
And we're welcoming you to the break on this What a Cartoon. Thanks for listening. And we also thank our premium patron for picking out this episode. I hope you guys enjoy this trip back into one of Adult Swim's best early shows, I would say, for sure.
I've regained my appreciation for Harvey Birdman. And now I want to play the game again.
And just watch like 80 episodes that go by like that on Hulu. You get a free 30-day trial of that if you went to tiny.cc/TSHulu. That's not really what we're here to plug in this break.
We're here to plug our Patreon and hopefully get you guys a lot of bonus stuff. So if you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, you'll get a ton of stuff at the $5 level if you want to support our show. You'll get both Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon a week ahead of time and ad-free, and so much else on top of that. All of our exclusive miniseries that we've done in the past and that we'll do in the future will live only on the Patreon. That includes things like Talking Critic, all 23 episodes of The Critic done with the Talking Simpsons/What a Cartoon treatment, the entire first season of Talking Futurama, and whatever our next miniseries is, whatever the next one we do, the patrons will vote on it and it'll live on the Patreon and there'll be bonus content there. Also, we have interviews, end-of-season wrap-ups, monthly community podcasts, deleted scene specials, end-of-season specials, and just, hey, what the hell, let's just do a bonus podcast-style podcast. Whatever we want to do that's extra, we'll put on there at the $5 level, and that's patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. That is what supports our show. That's what makes everything happen. That is how we live our lives and live the podcasting lifestyle in the go-go 90s.
We're recording this break in LA, actually, and we're able to go on trips like this to record cool podcasts like we did with Rebecca Sugar, Ian Jones-Cordy, and Toby Jones, which you'll hear on an upcoming Talking Simpsons. And we're able to do that thanks to your support at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. So we
Yes.
really appreciate that.
Yes, and if you give at the $5 level, once again, you will get a little code. You drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and you can download all of our bonus podcasts along with your normal free podcasts. You can easily fit us into your podcasting lifestyle. And if you're a new patron, boy, oh boy, you've got so much to catch up on, so much exclusive content that you'll love if you like listening to us. And I think you do because you've listened this far.
So thanks so much for listening. We'll send you now back to the rest of Harvey Birdman, attorney at law.
Have you been injured through no fault of your own? Call Harvey Birdman, attorney at law. In trouble with the IRS? I am. So I called Harvey Birdman. He's helping me, and that's why you should call Harvey Birdman now. Or meet me at the carnival by the Cooch tent. I look like that man on television. Not Harvey Birdman, the other one. My dream date is a tall, dark, blue-eyed woman with a bubble butt who'll fly me to Paris in a hot air balloon. Don't wait. Call now.
Who is the man in the suit? Who is the cat with the beard? attorney, habeas corpus, Marvy attorney, Harvey Birdman, attorney at law.
Okay, so this episode, written by Eric and Michael, and directed by Vincent Waller, who, Bob, he has quite a history in animation as well.
Yeah, he's a big-time, old-timey Ren and Stimpy guy, one of the good ones,
Yes,
along
yeah.
with Bob Jakes, who did actually some of the best animation in the entire series of Ren and Stimpy. So, two heavy hitters on this era of the show, at least.
Two of the real guys behind the Crazy Man on Ren and Stimpy. And they also worked on the first era of SpongeBob as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a lot, like Bob Camp, Vincent Waller, Bob Jakes. So many Ren and Stimpy guys are on SpongeBob, along with Rocko's Modern Life people, too.
Well, actually, Mick, why is a very personal injury one of your why is that your favorite Birdman episode?
Oh gosh, it's just great writing end to end. It reminds me a lot of Simpsons style writing where they don't give you any time to catch up with the jokes. It's just super duper dense. And the social commentary on this one is great. I particularly love Phil Lamar's character in it, portraying Black Vulcan, and the speech that he gives. They would also do a similar joke in C-Lab with the white Stormy
White
thing.
Debbie, yeah.
White Debbie.
So just, I don't know. This is just, to me, one of the early episodes, like you said, and it just came on strong and really set the tone for the series for me.
The plot is clearly inspired by the 90s lawsuit Liebeck versus McDonald's.
Not until much later in life did I realize all the jokes about that were just pro-corporate propaganda.
Yes.
Oh, God,
of course it's hot. It's coffee.
It's
Duh.
coffee. Is this how it is in America now, where people, you got to tell them that coffee's hot? Don't spill it on you.
Here's your sign.
Yes, exactly. It came with the narrative that that the lawsuit was about how there's no personal responsibility in America anymore, and everybody just wants to blame somebody else and sue them for it. Which it's an easy narrative to stick, which is why McDonald's pushed that so hard.
Oh my God! Of all the companies in the world, Ray A. Kroc's McDonald's to be the narrative of you're basically stealing from us because you're lazy.
They have the most integrity. Should we actually talk about what the lawsuit was about? We didn't actually mention that yet.
So an elderly woman, Liebeck in this case, she orders a cup of coffee from McDonald's, which at the time they were keeping at dangerously high heat.
I believe it was 190 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was because if it sits there that long at regular temperature, then the coffee gets bad sooner and they have to trade out the coffee, which that sounds too expensive for McDonald's to do. So instead they keep it at ultra boil the entire time. And so
And of course, this was the 90s, so it was super high quality coffee they were serving.
yes, the best coffee in 1993.
It was strained through a mummy.
And so everyone was getting ridiculously hot coffee in America from McDonald's. And and this one elderly woman spilled it on her crotch, got terrible burns, like the hospitalizing burns. It was on her genitals. Like, it's horrible what happened to her.
Mick is right. They were third-degree burns, and like the aftermath of this, she needed personal round-the-clock care until she died. Like, she severely burned herself. Again, third-degree burns from coffee.
But as the news, as all the news and the jokesters would have you think, it was just like, oh, somebody dropped coffee on their shoe and then sued McDonald's and got money for it. It's like, no, McDonald's was absolutely in the wrong here.
This is kind of gross, but her clothes like melted to her skin. And interesting prologue to this. Before this event, McDonald's had settled a lot of cases about people being burned by their coffee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when they did the case, McDonald's then pushed this pro-business thing, which all of them, most major businesses that were afraid of getting sued, easily picked up on, of just like, no, it's the consumer's fault. We knew what we were, even though the companies knew what they were doing, they blamed it all on the consumer. And she, in Liebeck versus McDonald's, became the poster child for that. And it's very sad. There's a very good Adam Ruins Everything about this, about how, like, even if you think you know everything about it, you hear that, you're like, oh, wow, the media completely lied to me about this.
It's true. And one important thing to note is that they didn't change the temperature at which their coffee was served because of this. The cups just got a lot better. Go back to 1994. It was a shitty little styrofoam cup with a really flimsy flat lid. Now they've got the nice Starbucks cups that are just very thick and resilient with the nice cap that just pops onto there. But they didn't change the temperature, and that's sort of the standard for every coffee place, corporate coffee place.
Hey, why change your standards when technology can solve it for you, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And
If you can pay one old lady who horribly mangles herself a year, then it's worth it.
who then gets libeled by every person on Earth and making fun of her and trying to say that her pain was just somebody trying to cash in on McDonald's. Like, it's just
There's a documentary about it called Hot Coffee from 2011. I haven't seen it, but I think it goes into way more detail than we are. Well, actually, of course it does. But
Or it's just 5 minutes long.
we did it justice.
This episode doesn't really take a side one way or the other on that, but that's where they're starting from. It was a famous. Even I, as a 18-year-old watching this, was like, oh, I know the reference. Like, duh.
It wasn't really an exploration of that case. It was like, okay, now we can make boner jokes.
Yes,
now it's time for boner jokes.
Really, what they realized there, and I guess let's talk about the Super Friends real quick before.
Oh boy,
I know we haven't played a clip yet, folks, but we got to talk about the Super Friends. So, Super Friends, the original series, Challenge of the Super Friends, was just a straight DC show where it was Hanna-Barbera doing their own DC Comics superhero show starring the Justice League. But they were told, well, the Justice League isn't kiddie enough, Super Friends. So, in the show, they still called themselves the Justice League, but the name of the show is the Super Friends. That was in 74, and that starred all the regular DC characters you love, which are all white guys plus Wonder Woman. So when they brought the show back, I want to say with the best of intentions, they wanted to diversify the Super Friends. So they created characters such as El Dorado, Black Vulcan, Samurai, and Apache Chief, who were respectively, Mexican, Japanese, African American, and Native.
They're basically
you could tell how woke they were because they literally named two characters after the job they did, not who they were.
I mean, they're literally Mike Tyson's Punch-Out characters.
They really are. I like I said, I want to think they did it with the best of intentions, and they just wanted to.
It was men born in the 20s making these decisions.
Yeah, they were doing their best. But so those characters proved so unpopular that they were only in that season of Super Friends. When they would bring back Super Friends again, then they'd have a season with the Wonder Twins. Then they'd have a season with Wendy and Marvin. And then they would have the season where they brought it back one more season where Firestorm was in it. And it was more He-Man-like. They saw how big He-Man was getting. So they're like, we can bring back Super Friends again. And the craziest shit with Super Friends, too, was they had all these great people working on it. Alex Toth redesigned all of the the Justice League for that show. That's also why Apache Chief looks of a type with Birdman as well in this episode. And yes, Apache Chief, the growing man who I love all the work they put into this just for it to be a dick jokes, just nonstop dick jokes.
And based on a later joke in this show, I'm going to assume all this cool stuff Apache Chief did was off screen.
Yes, they often. It's hard to animate those things.
Again, you're right, Henry. These are people that had to watch all this shit, so they knew, like, oh, they're not going to show him doing anything, and that's why this is a joke in the show.
Yes, and so Apache Chief mostly appeared just as a joke from then on and stuff. He was created for the cartoon for Hanna-Barbera, so he didn't appear in the comics and didn't have a comic book equivalent until in the early 2000s, both in the DC animated universe on Justice League, they created a character called Long Shadow, who was a indigenous person who grew very tall.
Okay.
And then in the 2002 Justice League comics, they created a character called Manitou Raven, who even said Apache Chief's Inukchuk as a magic word to do stuff. So he became kind of real, but for copyright reasons and also sensitivity reasons, they never called him Apache Chief.
Smart move.
Yeah. Actually, let me play a clip of classic Apache Chief here so you can hear what he originally sounded like.
Wonder Woman, she's in trouble. Inukchuk! Calling out the Apache word for big man, Apache Chief instantly becomes a 50-foot giant.
I wonder if that's factual. Man.
Knowing the accuracy and sensitivity that Hanna-Barbera was going for, I would have to think it must be.
They probably got that from F Troop or something.
They tried that. Well, it's funny too that Apache Chief was created at the time that the story of Native Americans was becoming more than just the savage of cowboys and Indians stuff. Like, I think the understanding in the 70s was getting a little better.
Well, hey, they could finally be portrayed by Italians on TV.
Yeah. And you're making them cry when you litter.
Yes.
That guy was Italian too.
They could at least be the noble savage, at least, who might not understand our fancy phones, but
Are they unfrozen cavemen lawyers?
Yes. Wikipedia thinks that his saying Inukchuk is a reference to Inuksuk, which is the Inuit word for stone statues. This is according to Wikipedia. I could have it all wrong. I'm reading Wikipedia here, folks. You can't be mad at me. Here is the Harvey Birdman's interpretation of an episode of Super Friends.
Through the cold depths of space, a giant space meteor sweeps towards Earth. Get me the Super Friends. That's not good.
Where are the Super Friends?
I am a Super Friend.
Let's see here. Apache Chief, organ donor. Fabulous. Well then, listen, don't let me stop you from using your heat vision on the meteor.
That's not my superpower.
Magic Tomahawk?
Dream catcher?
Warmer.
He's gonna leg wrestle.
There it is! A meteor! Is that Gautier?
Excuse me.
And they all lock up his loincloth.
Was that Stephen Colbert as the possibly gay man?
At first, I thought it was Michael Higgins Clark, but I definitely think it's Stephen Colbert there, yes. This was the first time I caught that the drunk guy said leg wrestle him, meaning a reference to Indian leg wrestling.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Had you caught that before, Mick?
Yes, yeah. I was going to point that one out.
Indian leg
Also, I
wrestling.
love the sound effects in here. That really, having watched a bit of the Super Friends Super Hour, whatever they called it, just spot on making use of the library there. So
All the sounds just.
And Maurice LaMarche.
Yes,
as both the narrator and Apache Chief.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he did a lot for this show.
And you may notice of many scenes in here when the guy mutes the distress call from the Super Friends, it's just a green guy, and my assumption is they drew Batman there, and they're like, DC said you cannot have Batman mute a distress call, so they just painted his costume green, and he's just some guy. And you actually will not see on screen at all any DC superheroes directly in this episode.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. I was like, is that Aquaman? I didn't know if that was the joke or not.
It's a little Aquaman-y, but I think DC in general was very sensitive to how their characters were joked about by Cartoon Network.
These are all very serious characters.
Well, there was going to be an Adult Swim show that was like a talk show hosted by Aquaman, and they made a pilot for it, and then it just got stopped. It didn't happen, and the only reason we got to see the pilot is because they aired it in a Spanish language country version of Cartoon Network. They aired it, but they didn't allow it to be seen in America because DC was being very protective of their characters, which, that's their job, whatever. But
they're always trying to make Aquaman cool.
Yes.
And it might take this year or next year, whenever that movie comes out.
It's shockingly this year still. December, barely. But so Apache Chief saves the day. He knocks it out of the park and kills a bunch of people on a plane. Does space genocide accidentally.
Was that recycled animation, or did that come from something else too?
I think it was new animation.
I think it was new. Yeah. I think the only recycled animation is in the beginning of like the crowds of people. I think that's it. In a lot of ways, like I was watching the Quick Draw McGraw one, and at a certain point, it's all new, but they add a bunch of fun filters to it to make it really look like it's a classic piece of garbage.
That fireball won't be hurting anyone now.
Yeah.
You're not Chuck.
They did carry away the drunk guy.
Yep.
Coffee, please.
Alrighty, that'll be $1.80. I'm sorry, Chief. No credit cards. Seems some idiot ripped our telephone pole out of the ground.
Oh, I think I have change. Ah! My lap! My lap!
And then into the theme song, which is great. The theme song's so good. It's in my head now, like all over again.
Eric Richter wrote and sang that song.
Oh, really?
He's the composer and singer of
God.
it. The Apache Chief, he's so sad. He saved the day.
Thank you.
They celebrate the alcoholic, not him. After making, I do love that they all make stereotypical superpower guesses on him. And he still's like, well, you are getting closer.
Dreamcatcher?
Dreamcatcher Tomahawk. And it was also just so great that they play the full theme as he's just standing there sadly and nothing happens. He's like, okay, you're welcome. Like,
Yeah.
And it's also funny that they don't show the inside of the coffee place. And I wonder if they ever animated it or if they intended to, if they're just like, you know what, just as black, we're having so much trouble with the animation on this, just a still image and it'll spill off screen.
Maybe it's so the damage is all in your head and it's way worse than what they could animate.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I also think it fits pretty well with the Hanna-Barbera. Just
Yeah.
anything exciting happens off screen.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess we're still in the quote unquote old animation, even though it's new animation.
Yeah, Hanna-Barbera would not have animated that. That is very true. This was one of the few things in it that really dated it, when they're just like, oh yeah, telephone lines for credit card, right? Now everybody just has the thing plugged into their iPhone and
the square thing,
the square thingy. Yeah, but yes, the
you
theme.
guys got to learn that. You need more sponsors.
Oh damn it! The theme song is great. I love the art direction on it too. Just all the kind of pop art style look to it too. I really like.
Lichtenstein?
Yeah, Lichtenstein style to it too. I really like.
Yeah, it was done by like an independent company, so there's lots of animators having their hands on all this stuff.
The sound of it reminds me a lot of the 60s Batman. They were going for that kind of a catchy jazz funky thing.
It really reminds me of also Venture Brothers music too.
Yeah.
You know, like the sort of loungy but also really brassy music.
They're all calling back to the 60s in these things. And it was too like we got with the Tick when we did the Tick episode too. Very similar genre of music. So we come back in and so we're just in Harvey's office and he's talking about some indecent exposure. We get to see Avenger typing away. I love that Avenger does everything for him and that Harvey is basically useless.
I love Avenger so much. He's so cute. And also I have to say this is a very
you love birds.
This is a very bird positive show, despite the main character being just a complete dork loser.
Yes.
Avenger is one of the best characters. He's always doing something in the background. Yeah. I love all the jokes with Avenger.
Bob, you are Birdman.
I really am. Oh God, no, not in real life. I've got it going on.
But this also though, Harvey doesn't seem as sad in this without Peanut, because Peanut, who's not in this episode, he and Phil Kensebin disrespect Harvey so much.
And they both like gaslight him from different angles too.
Yes, yeah.
Like Peanut makes him worry about things all the time.
He's just like, no, I bet that is cancer, but it's a mole. Or he's like, no, you're getting pretty fat. That was a fat guy grunt. Like all the But the Apache Chief arrives.
Say, how about a little something hot to drink? Oh, no. Please, God, no. Oh, don't be silly. No trouble at all. Avenger! So, what's up?
Well, I saved the town the other day, and anyway, afterwards I thought, man, a coffee would be nice, but I spilled it on my lap.
Mm-hmm.
And, wow, it was hot on my lap.
I'll bet.
Hotness. Crunch. Ouch.
Yeah, Oh, what are you trying to say?
I can no longer enlarge.
Oh. Let's all go to the mountains, huh? I'll take the case. Nothing, huh? Not even first thing in the morning? Little...
I forgot the tea kettle goes, pew.
Yes, yeah. It's great sound design. You can really hear it in these.
Oh, the Foley totally sells the tension and everything, along with Apache Chief's voice acting. Just really great, uncomfortable moment.
And Harvey trying to dance around it.
Yes, yeah.
Let's all go to the mountains, huh?
Well, and Maurice is he's given a very stereotypical voice to have to recreate, and he finds tons of ways to both have like naturalistic acting in there, but also like tons of like tension too. Like he's like, I saved the town, and I saved the town.
Yeah.
He was waiting for Harvey to be like, oh, thanks, or whatever. No one cares.
There's a lot of really naturalistic readings from this like very like stereotypical cartoon character.
Yes. And God, like you said earlier, Mick, the coffee stuff with just Avenger walking with the coffee tray in his beak just is so great. The way he hunches over, Apache Chief hunches over his lap too. Also, right before that, it's a running gag that Harvey is uncomfortable around anybody who's not white, but he overcompensates. He's like, hey, how, yeah.
I forgot about that. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I love the handshake. He tries to show that he's down with the struggle.
Yes.
Sort of the forearm handshake.
Yeah. And this is, I think, is the first episode they discovered that they liked having the voice actors make a sound effect with their mouth that then the character just says, like, not even a little...
Yeah, that was a great cut to the next scene, too.
Yeah. And so we head into the courtroom, and we get to see the first ever appearance of Stephen Colbert on the show.
I love him so much.
You think we have a chance?
It depends who the other attorney... Doctor. Back off! I've got a shrink gun. Who touched my ankle? Gun! You think I don't see? You think I don't feel your eyes like grubby little fingers, little children's fingers on my body? Back off! I'll make you teensy!
You! Put that pop gun away!
When I was a kid, if someone brandished a shrink gun, he'd get a little bit of respect. Shrink gun!
Oh my god. So I think when they moved to the Adobe animation, they really sold him just popping out of everywhere and just like appearing so much better, but it still works here, and I just love his like very like theatrical but also super anxious, like back off.
Who touched my ankle?
Colbert gets so much out of this character, and if you ever watched any of the original Harvey Birdman shows, like the villains are nothing in it. So for him to come in and just like this is the personality of Reducto to me, just based on that.
They were really smart to hire so many great improvisers that could just be handed a role with nothing to go on, like Reducto or Mentok the Mind Taker as well, who just are like, okay, then I'm going to find tons of crazy shit to say as this person. And
is that Michael McKean, Mentok?
No, that's Jonathan Michael Higgins.
Okay.
McKean is the theatrical, the very theatrical prosecutor that Birdman faces often, who's one of his former villains. I forget his name.
Shakespearean guy.
Yeah.
And we should explain who the judge is. Is it Mitor?
It's Mitor.
I thought this was like they dressed up Space Ghost or something. I didn't know.
Basically the same
I didn't know
guy.
until research for doing this. Like Mitor was real, and there are 10 episodes of Mitor.
Him and Space Ghost met each other in a crossover episode.
Oh my god!
Yeah, he is just this
like
old
Stone Age.
Yeah, Stone Age Space Ghost. Yeah.
But now he's like a cranky country lawyer or a country judge.
Yeah, his name's actually Hiram Mitor in these shows. And he too is he's specifically a Georgia redneck, as will be revealed later in the episode. He's like, the Dogs are playing Tennessee. He's referring to the Georgia Bulldogs, that football team. But I mean, that fits with Cartoon Network being a very Atlanta-based thing. Even if they weren't making this out of Atlanta, it's hard to tell. It seemed like they would at least be recording most of the people in New York.
Now everything is made in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, because of more tax cuts. Mitor is he's one of the sillier ones in the show, and I just love his like, blah! Just his many just sounds that his mouth makes. And I love that Apache Chief, his costume, for the trial, he merely puts on a tie over his bare-chested loincloth outfit. And so we get the opening statements.
And today you'll hear how this hero, who could, before the accident, grow many, many times his normal size and remain that way, all day if necessary. A proud, unbending, rock-hard pillar of justice, a rigid staff of liberty. That hero is left lifeless. He is nothing now. So small. You'll also hear from his peers. Lesser heroes all. How devastating a loss of powers can be.
Mr. Reducto, you're up.
What kind of stinking superhero loses his powers to a cup of coffee in the crotch? That's all I have.
Didn't try as hard on Reductos.
Not really. So we explored this a bit on Talking Simpsons, but the courtroom is a great vehicle for comedy because there is a formula.
Yes.
You have all of your sketches established, like here's opening testimony, opening arguments, here's questioning, here's jury stuff. Like there are so many things you can just drop comedy into, and also there are rules in this system, and it's fun to break them. So a lot of the comedy is like you sort of have like an initial push in terms of comedy writing. Like the framework is there for you.
And that they can do silly things. In this case, like Reducto shrinking Birdman as he's giving his presentation.
Yeah.
And then
Fight
it. He's getting blasted in the crotch with the solar powers that Birdman in no other way uses in the show, really. That's another great thing in the finale is that they actually have like a big superhero fight and he remembers that he can do all these things. And that's a great gag too in this, that Birdman keeps trying to say like, oh yeah, you think of superheroes like Wonder Woman, Superman, Birdman. I don't think about Birdman. Not the product. He misses being a superhero. He can see his failures in Apache Chief as well. That's another great one that Apache Chief is just like, freelancing, which is just the lie you tell people when I could see the writers pulling from that there too. They're just like, oh, and someone asked me what I'm doing in between jobs. I'm like, freelancing mostly.
I hated saying that too, so I felt it.
We get our first witness on the case, and we get catchphrase for Harvey Birdman created in this scene.
State your name for the record.
Black Vulcan.
Mr. Vulcan, tell us about your superpower.
Pure electricity. In my pants.
Oh, my.
Sorry, man. Tell us, what would life be like without your powers?
Well, you know how it is when the power goes out in your house? It would be like that, only in your pants.
Indeed. Your witness.
Isn't it true that the reason you left the Super Friends is because you were fired? Fired? Fired! Why?
They said it was some sort of budget thing. But I think it's because I complained that they were always pairing me up with a white super friend. Like I was gonna start super looting the minute they weren't watching. And you think I named myself Black Vulcan? Hell no. I used to go by Supervolt. Black Vulcan was Aquaman's idea. And I said, well, maybe we should just call you Whitefish.
Oh. Ooh, I like that.
One.
Yeah.
Humorously enough, Phil Lamar would go on to play Whitefish many times in DC animated features.
Wow, and also another big voice actor.
Huge. I mean, he was already big in 2000 when they must have been producing this at first. He was already on Futurama.
Right.
And he would go on to be like, he is one of the guys. He was doing Samurai Jack. He was doing the Justice League show and playing Jon Stewart to the Green Lantern on there. He's in everything now. I got to interview him once. The nicest guy, super friendly. But he really brings like the anger to Black Vulcan or Supervolt right there.
It's a great little scene.
Nice to know that he was immune to Mad TV's career killing.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
He was safer. I mean, him and Key and Peele, they were all right. It doesn't kill too. There's people who escaped. Not as many success stories as SNL, of course.
I think judging by Artie Lang, it makes you unkillable.
Don't say that. He's going to pass away by the time this goes out.
Please. I'm not saying please
Do you
die.
have
I'm
What
saying
a Cartoon anti-death jingle yet?
No.
we don't have a What a Cartoon curse, but please, Artie Lang, don't die.
No, live a long
Stay
life.
sober. Yeah.
So the character of Black Vulcan, I did want to talk about that a little bit. He could have been a DC character when they put him in the show called Black Lightning, who was the funky soul brother of the 70s that DC created, which DC partially did that because they got shamed into realizing that they were, so not to say that Marvel was ahead of the time of having a black superhero, because they didn't have one until 1966 with Black Panther. For DC, it was the mid 70s before they created a black superhero. And it was just, DC was the more conservative publisher,
right,
let's say. But so when they did, they created characters like Black Lightning, who they were like, they kind of overcorrected, or, well, like it came out of the time of like Superfly and all these shows. So it was a blaxploitation character with a big afro and lightning powers.
So that makes me wonder, was Black Panther before the actual Black Panther Party, or was that...
They neither was based on the other, but I do believe, I don't know if it was known on a national scale, but the Black Panther movement had begun before he appeared in Fantastic Four number 52. But so why isn't Black Vulcan Black Lightning? Well, DC had started a new deal in the 70s. DC got shamed by the news when they found out that Siegel and Schuster, the creator of Superman, were basically living in poverty. And they were so shamed by it, they're like, okay, we'll give them some money just as like a please stop being mad at us thing. And we'll even have a kind of like royalty sharing deal with any new characters created after this date. Black Lightning was one of those characters created, which should tell you, oh, then cool. When he gets licensed to other stuff, then some royalties will go to the creator. What actually happens is, or in the case of Super Friends, Hanna-Barbera says, we want Black Lightning, but we don't want to pay those royalties. We'll create Black Vulcan and not pay this guy.
Original character.
Yes.
Do not steal.
But that's also why Black Vulcan and Apache Chief get to be in this, because they are owned by Hanna-Barbera, not DC. So they didn't have to negotiate with DC to put their characters in this show. But that's also why we get to see one of the Wonder Twins.
Yay.
In your statement dated September 20-something, the day in question, you stated that you had expressed knowledge of one of the more familiar Super Friends' whereabouts, a Wonder Woman, I believe?
That's correct. She was at home.
Any idea why she wouldn't have answered the town's distress call?
Well, she said she really needed some me time, so she unplugged her communicator and took a bath.
How do you happen to know this?
I was the bathwater. Form of a wash rack.
Oh, God. And that is Michael Bell.
Yes, yeah, as the playing his character again. They could get some people to resume their roles for it, which was really great. He's very funny there as creeping out Wonder Twin Jace. I don't know if we're to take that Wonder Woman knew he was the bathwater or not.
I think we're not supposed to know.
The bigger question here is, because they couldn't do their transformation powers without one another, was like, on it?
Was she like a mouse or something hiding in the corner?
Filming it.
Yes.
But I mean, the joke is he would always turn into water.
Yes. Well, so he could be any form of water that it could take. And meanwhile, Jan, the other twin, she could turn into any type of animal. And actually, this, let me tell you guys, if you missed this in the original Adult Swim run of it, because they didn't play it all that much, look up The New Adventures of the Wonder Twins. It was, so on Super Friends, the Wonder Twins got to do these like kind of PSAs of like, hey, don't do dares or learn a lesson, kids. So they reanimated those, but to have horrible endings. Like one of the best ones was they took this one where these kids were dared to go into this cave and a bear is in there and the bear is about to kill them. In the original one, Jan takes the form of a beaver and Jace takes the form of water, and they create a moat around the bear that stops him from eating the kids. In the new version, in the New Adventures version, they do the beaver moat, and then the bear steps over it and tears the kids apart.
When were these made? I had to have seen them. Okay, wow. I need to go see if they're online.
And then so then it cuts to later at the funeral, and they're at the funeral, and the mother says like, "Well, I learned that a little beaver, a 2-inch beaver moat's not going to stop a bear." Oh, wait, I already knew that. You could have turned into a cage of ice. You could have turned into a dinosaur or a bigger bear.
Now I know I've seen these before.
Yes.
Those are really good. Yeah,
they're great. Yep. So, I love Whitefish is such a great line too. God, I love White. It was something as a kid I didn't think about as a little suburban boy. Just like, oh yeah, why are so many black superheroes called Black this? It's strange. Oh, then they show off all the ways Apache Chief has been working since getting fired by the Super Friends in shame. And my favorite of the slideshow stuff is that when he's at the kids park, they have a bird that pulls his loincloth up so he's not exposing himself to children.
Is he also like at a used car lot too?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
Which really what you're paying for is to look up his loincloth and see his genitals.
I believe there is a woman pointing up.
Yes, yeah. and also people drive under his legs like a giant redwood tree.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where there is a bear pointing at him who will show up later. And it was in the first run of the animation, they loved that bear so much that they would draw that bear into every episode after that. Like, this bear looks stupid and dumb, and he has to appear from now on.
And he's not from anything.
No, he's simply just a brown bear.
That bear is great, though.
And that's also, Bob, where they had the clips from Super Friends where they describe things off the screen.
Yeah. Oh, look, now he's doing this.
He's the space dragon is so impressed with his juggling of boulders.
And of course, they're just flipping the animation back and forth.
Yes, they didn't even draw a different crowd. Then they have another recurring scene where they go to the bar, which is run by the head of FEAR, Fear, another villain from from classic Birdman.
Again, I did not know this.
This one I didn't even know until looking it up this time. Like in classic Law and Order or other lawyer procedurals, they're having an off-the-record bargaining conversation, Reducto and Birdman.
So, as we see from this tape, your power was
growing large at will, especially in the mornings.
Could you demonstrate that for us now?
No, I haven't been able to grow since I burned myself on the winter blend.
A man who stood so tall, now so small. Nothing further.
I'll have it, Brandy Alexander. We're willing to settle. Put down the fizzy gun.
What's the offer?
$1.89.
It's not the money, Reducto. It was never about the money. Mr. Superhero, how can we ever repay you?
Do you want to be shrunk?
You know, when it comes right down to it, don't we all just want to be thanked?
No one wants to be shrunk. It's the point. It's a shrink gun. Back off!
Yeah, I think this whole thing would go away if he somehow felt appreciated.
I'm scheming. This is my scheming face. First I raise this eyebrow, and then... Back off!
Back off!
He's so great.
He even does it to the camera that's zooming in on him.
He reminds me, so there's another character that's like him, X the Eliminator.
Yes.
And, where is he from?
He's also a Birdman villain.
Okay. It's funny because he's basically the same character. He goes between the extreme of wanting to kill Birdman to just being very pathetic and nebbish, but it's still like such a great character.
Well, X is in love with Birdman.
That too. I guess there's that angle too.
He stalks him entirely, and he has a monstrous crush on him. And all he wants is the crest on Birdman's head. And they reuse footage from that too in that episode because they're showing the original one. They're like, "We want the crest," and X is like, "Really? I could kill him too?" They're like, "Nope, the crest."
He has a giant killing machine too.
Yes, yeah,
a very cumbersome one
to move everywhere with him. Same with the duplicator guy too. Was in the original Birdman that Elliot. They didn't call him that, but he. So this is Reducto. He was offering him $1.89, which I guess is the cost of coffee. Like, is a cup of coffee cost?
They'll pay for the coffee. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which no one wants to be shrunk. That's the
point.
I wonder if he is Colbert. How much of that was Colbert? I have to think a bit. I think especially his scheming face thing was just like, say some more stuff over this animation. It doesn't really fit here.
I mean, I would just pay him to be funny. Why bother writing? If Stephen Colbert is in the room.
That's like hiring Donald Glover for your movie or TV show too. It's just like, I mean, we wrote some stuff, but you just say the funny things. Like, just do that. So we head back to the court, and they bring up a woman whose name is hard to say, which is that's Colbert just say. According to the commentary, that's Colbert just saying that out loud when he's recording.
Oh, wow.
But basically, here's the last minute of the whole episode.
I would like to call the manager of the Javalux coffee shop, Shibble Schussler. That's a hard name to say. Miss Schussler, how long have you managed this coffee shop?
3 years.
And in that time, how many people have burned themselves in your establishment?
Just one.
So, you'd say that your products are safe?
Well, no. Some are actually quite hot.
Objection!
She's your witness.
Huh? Oh, right. Well, shut up!
I'm afraid I can't shut up. What has happened to this man is wrong. The Super Friends abandoned him, and we ignored him.
Objection.
My scheme is working.
There may be more famous superheroes. But I, for one, would not be sitting here today were it not for his selfless heroism.
Objection.
And when they're ready, I'll tell my children of the day that humble man saved our town.
Chief got his teepee back. Case dismissed.
So you can't see it, but as she's giving her testimony, birds appear and they undo her tied up hair, let her hair down. There's no joke as to how her apron comes off and how her cleavage is revealed, but she eventually turns into a gorgeous Native American woman feeding a horse out of her hands and then holding a baby and a little papoose. Is that what that is?
I think.
Yes.
Okay.
And she is just Apache Chief has never been more turned on. And so, though that doesn't fix a burned I guess they're saying that it was more psychological than physical that was done to him, perhaps.
Yeah.
That was Reducto's scheme all along.
It's working.
It's working. Well, then
I think he was basically saying that he just needed to be appreciated. So, she does try and validate him.
That's true. That's what was in his head the whole time. Without being appreciative, I wonder how impotent he was before the coffee. No one liked him.
It was easy to miss that plot info because Reducto was threatening somebody all throughout that scene.
Yes, that's true. That's right. You talk about the speed of this, Bob. That's the speed of this too, that they have many moments that build up that no one appreciates him and that no one thanks him. Like he says, I saved the town, and Birdman doesn't say anything. He constantly talks about how he saves stuff and nobody cares. So finally having somebody tell him they appreciate him, then his dick works again.
I actually didn't even think of that until this discussion.
Me neither.
I was like, oh, he got a boner, and now he's fixed. But yeah, the show is so fast and so packed with info and plot stuff and jokes. It does take a few rewatches to be like, oh, okay, there is a story here.
Yes.
Along with all these jokes.
Well, Chief got his teepee back. That's pretty funny.
It tracks.
Like that.
Chief got his teepee back.
So what are they going to do in the end here?
So what now, my friend?
Well, the guys and I have been talking, and we're thinking about forming our own group.
Yeah, the Multiculture Pals.
Apache Chief, Black Vulcan,
That's Super Hulk.
Juan Gigante, the Negotiator and his super sidekick, Petzela, the French Tickler, and Jesse Jackson.
Multiculture Pals, many heroes.
One voice.
You know, we could always appeal.
That is okay, my friend. I may have lost the case, but I gain so much more.
They all clap, the silent clapping, and then the laughter at this. It is small amount of growth from the kiss. That's a very cute gag.
So yeah, I guess the bear was clapping and then no one else was clapping.
Yes.
And then as soon as he felt bad about that, they all laughed. So does every episode end with a group laughing?
Yes.
I thought so, yeah.
Always back in, that's the pattern too, just like you said, always back at Harvey's office, and they just say like, hey, I actually figured this thing out, or they like, oh, this fixes everything. Ha 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 ha.
Or there's a new problem that will persist, but the show just has to end.
Yeah, it just has to end.
Yeah.
They got to the end. And that was kind of where it was there. And that's why the bear would usually come back. Many of those multicultural pals would come back. They would draw
Juan Gigante.
They would draw Jesse Jackson into other ones too.
That's a great picture of Jesse Jackson. A great drawing.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that design on him, and he's doing the little thing with his hand in the rainbow.
He's got a very smug look on his face. Yeah, holding a rainbow.
Well, and it's not just that they're the diverse group of people, but they all are dick jokes as well.
Yeah.
Juan Gigante, the French tickler, the I guess Moyles for the Jewish one.
Yes,
The negotiator.
they're covering their their crotches.
Yes,
as well.
yeah. The genital the in my pants powers of Super Friends. It's a funny ending too. Just a great episode about getting to do dick jokes for a full 11 minutes, a full rigid 11 minutes
Before they broke the dick barrier. Yeah,
Yes,
it was
yeah.
very naughty.
It was. They could do that with Apache Chief of all the silly things to do with Apache Chief. That's
But
what
I think it kind of ends up working better to
Mhm.
have to do all of that innuendo, because you get all of those great designs on the characters, you get all of the great dancing around that they have to do, versus when they finally could do it, the Wong Burger thing is just a bunch of pixelated garbage
Yeah.
being thrown around the screen.
No, I agree with you. I think restrictions and boundaries make comedy a lot better because you have to try harder. You can just be like, well, yeah, dick, shit, whatever.
Yeah. What a cartoon. Pro censorship. It makes you more creative. No.
Pro network censorship. Censor me, I dare
They're
you.
peaches. They're frozen peaches.
That also reminds me of in the Colbert book, in his first book, he has a great bit of just like, I'm pro censorship. It's my First Amendment right to say that I'm pro censorship.
That is great.
This was a great episode. I loved even this early in it is still super dense with jokes. They are struggling against their animation budget, but they really pulled this off, and also struggling against what DC will let them do with their superheroes. But a really funny episode.
Thank you for suggesting this, Mick. I had so much fun with it. I forgot how much I love Harvey Birdman, but I immediately, after doing my notes for this, I jumped into like 4 or 5 more. And again, it's all on Hulu. What's the URL for?
Tiny.cc/TS Hulu. That's T is in talking, S is in Simpsons.
We have to show for that, by the way, all the time. But it's all on Hulu, and there's 39 episodes, and it goes by so fast. Like these are so. If you just want to sit down and eat lunch, just like watch 2 of them, and you'll be totally laughing and choking on your food. Mick, any final thoughts on Harvey Birdman, its legacy? Are you excited for the reboot special?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And again, it was just one of those shows that I think really allowed for this style of animation to have a space. It was one of the things that made Adult Swim what it is today, and so that's why I thought it would be worth revisiting.
And it was.
Yeah, and I want to say I would hope that Harvey Birdman maybe got Adult Swim thinking about, oh yeah, we could do Venture Brothers, we could do things with animation, not just sliding around a GIF of Master Shake, or repurposing C Lab footage. You know, it's real animation.
Oh yeah, one last thought I meant to say in the beginning is that I was kind of knocking it that this was like executive produced by an actual Cartoon Network executive, but I do think that this show, for all the problems it had, would have been canceled before we ever saw it if a Cartoon Network executive wasn't a co-creator.
Yes, so his power got us 4 seasons.
Yeah, 4 seasons, 37 episodes, 39 episodes, and great animation. Like you said, this opened the door for full animation on Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, instead of just the cheap stuff that they could do. The entertaining, but cheap
stuff. It was basically glorified video effects like Space Ghost.
Yes.
But they evolved beyond that. So, Mick, do you want people to find you? Is there anywhere people could talk to you or say thank you? Or would you rather be just, a ship passing in the night?
I don't know. I'm not super active on my personal Twitter. I do sports Twitter, but it's probably not for your audience, so it's fine.
Okie doke. Yes.
Okay.
We're always online, so we have like 9 URLs and 14 Twitter handles to give people at all times, but don't be like us.
No. But thank you, Mick, so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So thanks a lot for listening, everybody. In case you didn't know, the show and our entire network of shows is supported by Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you can find out how to help our show and find out how to get all kinds of bonus stuff. So if you sign up at the $5 level, you'll get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and ad-free. And the same goes for Talking Simpsons as well. And at that $5 level, we also have so many exclusive series that will only be on the Patreon, like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, so many interviews with Simpsons writers and other animation legendaries, monthly community podcast, season wrap-ups for Talking Simpsons, deleted scene specials for Talking Simpsons. There's so much going on at the Patreon. If you sign up now, you'll get a nice little code. You drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts and fit our bonus podcast into your podcast listening lifestyle. Henry, can you please tell our nice listeners what are 2 Patreon-exclusive podcasts people can hear on the Patreon right now?
Well, one from the archives I'd love to throw people to is our interview with Ian Jones-Quartey, who is the creator of OKKO, know he worked on Steven Universe, he worked on Venture Brothers, and he had tons of cool stories for us about working on those shows and being a big-time classic video game fan as well. It's a really cool one to listen to, especially if you liked him on our recent episode of Talking Simpsons, Millhouse Divided. And I'd also say listen to one of our newer interviews with Dan McGrath. He is a lesser-known Simpsons writer, but no less great. He worked on seasons 4, 5, and 6. He wrote the episodes Boy Scouts in the Hood and Bard of Darkness, as well as the two of the best Treehouse of Horror segments ever, Time and Punishment and The Devil and Homer Simpson. Plus, he wrote for Mission Hill, SNL, King of the Hill, and Gravity Falls. He has tons of cool stories.
Yes, so check that out at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you can't give at the $5 level, we would appreciate even $1 a month, just as a way of saying thanks a lot for your podcast, guys. We would appreciate it. As for me, I have been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. I have another podcast on a different network. That's right, I'm cheating on Talking Simpsons. It's called Retronauts, and that is a classic gaming podcast. I've been doing it since 2006. That was a lie, actually. It's existed since 2006. I infiltrated that podcast in 2011, and I'm not leaving. So
cultural Marxism.
That's right. So check it out at retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast device. I recommend find a topic that you like and check out that episode. I think you'll like it, guys. And then subscribe if you do. And Henry, how about you?
I am HENEREYG on Twitter. You can follow me there for updates on all the stuff we do and the cool people we get to interview. And also sometimes I get into arguments on there, but hey, it's fun. That's fun too. So follow me there, HENEREYG. And last time, plug in that 30-day free trial of Hulu. Sign up at tiny.cc/TSHulu for a 30-day free trial, and you can watch Harvey Birdman there.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, Episodes 1 and 2.
Ha ha! Dangly parts.